Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Amari's Revenge. The goddess next door is confronted by a Nubian queen out for revenge at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in this inaugural Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Amari's Revenge in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Better get the coleslaw, y'all, cause we're having us a barbecue. There's a report that the Orange Man is proposing 50-year home mortgages and 15-year car loans in an effort to motivate young people into buying homes and cars.
I talk about a bad deal.
This isn't a mortgage. It's bad comedy. Now, what the Orange Man is trying to propose is a deal similar to what President Franklin Delano Roosevelt proposed for many American soldiers when they came back from World War II, as related to giving them 30-year mortgages back in the late 1940s and early 1950s in an effort to help them get their lives started and be able to build equity and wealth with their brand new homes. However, the Orange Man's proposal basically sounds like one of those bad deals that led to many of the multiple bankruptcies that he had in the 1980s with his hotels and casinos, and sounds like a deal that would be a raw deal for anybody who were to go out here and sign an agreement to take out such a long mortgage. Now, these 50-year-old mortgages, as the Orange Man proposes, again are a plan to so-called stimulate the economy, but these 50-year mortgages basically are just an economic screwjob for any American who goes out here and foolishly agrees to this raw deal that's going to lead to them not getting any sort of equity or wealth in their lifetime. Now, when it comes to a mortgage, mortgages usually run anywhere from about 15 to about 30 years in order to so that the person can basically be able to own the property in their lifetime. But a 50-year mortgage basically ensures that the person is just paying on a property that they will never really own in their lifetime. Because in order for a person to get a 50-year mortgage, if they started at 21 years old when they got out of college, they would basically be 71 years old by the time they wound up finally paying off this mortgage. And by the time they wound up paying off this mortgage, this would not be a good deal for them at the end of the day. And it wouldn't be a good deal for them at the end of the day, because when you have a 50-year mortgage, basically you are just paying more in interest than the property is worth. And as you're paying all that interest, you've basically paid the bank twice what the property is worth, and you come out owning nothing at all and having no equity whatsoever. I mean, for example, let's take a $500,000 home, which really is overvalued when it comes down to American homes right now, because that's the standard value of an American house. Now, if a person takes out a 50-year mortgage, they basically, they'll get a lower payment in the short term, but what will happen is they will wind up paying almost twice as much for that property in the long term than that property is actually worth. And as a result, that person will be completely underwater on that property. And as they will be completely underwater on that property, they basically will wind up like many New York landlords in the 1960s and 1970s, who basically owned property that they spent anywhere from $7,000 to $8,000. But then, because of the result of the fiscal crisis, many of those landlords basically with those $8,000 properties were stuck with property that basically had $32,000 to $64,000 tax rates, and with those properties having such a high tax rate that basically it was worth the taxes cost more than the property was worth, and that landlord basically was completely underwater. And that's what led to many landlords abandoning their property here in New York in the 1960s and 1970s, or looking to burn down their properties for the insurance money, because the property in and of itself had lost all of its value. And as that property wound up losing all of its value to the owner as an economic asset of wealth, what happened is many of those property owners of homes, many of those apartment slum building owners basically wound up in a place where they couldn't afford to own that property, and that property wound up again losing all of its value, and the owner themselves wound up in a fiscal situation where they were sunk under this underwater property. And this is what the Orange Man is proposing for every average, everyday American who is from a millennial to Gen Z to get into. And that's a bad deal to get into, because it shows how the Orange Man doesn't know the art of the deal on modern real estate, and is completely out of touch as related to the realities of the modern real estate market, which is, in my opinion, completely overvalued. And as it's completely overvalued, what he hopes to do is to get you to buy into some overvalued property that you're going to pay twice as much for if you take out this really bad loan, a bad loan that basically no average everyday American could be able to afford, the way our grandfathers and great-grandfathers were able to do in the 1940s and the 1950s. Now, in those times, a person could work a factory job or a good job at basically make anywhere from about $8,000 to $10,000 a year, and again be able to pay on that mortgage and come out of it with, again, enough money to be able to feed their whole family. They could go out here and buy a house for $8,000 or $10,000, go out here and buy a car for $2,000 or $3,000. But today, most average everyday Americans basically make anywhere from, again, $35,000 to $45,000 a year. And right now, homes now cost, again, $500,000, and these cars now cost $50,000 due to all of the computers in them. And as a result, the average everyday American can't afford to buy these essentials as a part of life, in the quality of life in America, such as these homes and these cars. No, the average everyday American young person in their 20s, again, barely makes, again, $35,000 to $45,000 a year, but yet these disconnected guys like the Orange Man and those in the financial industry want to propose, hey, take out a 50-year mortgage, and that'll be the thing that solves things, in addition to taking out a 15-year car loan. Again, mind-bogglingly stupid proposals, because, again, taking out that loan basically means that this person is going to be underwater from minute one. They're going to be underwater from minute one on such a bad loan for this home, and they're going to be underwater as related to that loan, as related to the compound cost, not just of this loan as related to the mortgage, because this is what got people in trouble with the subprime mortgages back in 2008. What got them in trouble with the subprime mortgages is that a lot of these people went out and got these mortgages without having any sort of financial qualification. They were giving mortgages to people with no job, no way of making payments, and telling people to buy these homes at these low mortgage prices. And what they didn't know was that the balloon payment was coming, and as a result, they couldn't pay the balloon payment. And again, this led to multiple defaults all across the country, which led to the subprime mortgage crash. And the 50-year mortgage would be the exact same thing. It would be the exact same thing, because you would have all these young people, again, buying into a mortgage that they can barely afford, because again, when you're making $40,000 a year, you really don't have that much money, and you're buying into the mortgage for this $500,000 to $1 million home. And as a result, what people don't understand is that when you buy property, you not only have to, again, buy the property, you also have other costs that come into the property. There's property tax, which eats a big chunk of your money. There's maintenance of the property, such as taking care of the lawn, taking care of the gutters on the roof, taking care of the infrastructure of the home, and again, and sometimes even buying new appliances, because appliances like refrigerators and washing machines and ovens, they will break, and again, you have to buy all this stuff. So being a homeowner isn't cheap. And again, a lot of people, they walk into this not really understanding the cost of owning a home, not understanding the cost of owning a home, and more importantly, maintaining a home, because again, what really gets people jammed up is the cost as related to maintenance. And the same thing happens as related to cars. And that's where I also just had a good laugh when they sat there and talked about 15-year car loans. They sat there and talked about a 15-year car loan. And that's where I just had to shake my head, because only a fool would go out here and get a 15-year car loan, because cars in and of themselves basically lose 50% of their value when you drive them off the lot. When you drive a car off the lot and it's $50,000, you basically lost 50% of that value, and you taking out a 15-year car loan on an asset that's going to depreciate over time is absolutely ridiculous, considering when you have cars, again, cars lose value as you own them, and things lead to that car basically depreciating because you're putting miles on this vehicle if it's an A to B vehicle. And if you're putting miles on this vehicle, you're also going to have to pay for maintenance, such as oil changes, such as changing the transmission fluid, such as, again, repairs to different sensors and different wires in the car, because and getting new air cleaners and things like that. I mean, cars in and of themselves, what again costs people money is not the initial purchase of the car. What's going to cost you is the maintenance. And if you go out here and buy certain cars, again, the maintenance costs wind up eating people up. I mean, I've seen this happen with a lot of folks here in the Bronx. They'll be like, oh, I want to buy this BMW or this Mercedes at the auction for $1,000. And then they find out, oh, this car is in here, this BMW is in here because of Manos issues or issues with the engine. And this car is going to need at least about $4,000 worth of work to get it to be drivable. That's what they find out when they buy these BMWs. And then people buy these Mercedes with 100,000 miles on them and find out, oh, this engine got issues, this engine got sensor issues, this transmission basically is blown, and they find out, oh, this is going to cost about $7,000 to $10,000, and this is why the owner dropped this car off at the auction, because they know that it's junk. They know, yeah, it's a Mercedes, yeah, it's a BMW, but the cost of, again, maintaining this car was the thing that led to that person dropping that car because it costs more to fix this car than owning it again out here whatsoever. And that's again just that's basic. That's just the basic maintenance stuff, things like hoses and other items, again, such as those air filters and other parts. And then you got the work on the brakes and the rotors. I mean, all this stuff basically adds up, and you've got to do all that maintenance work and pay for that maintenance in addition to paying that 15-year payment. And you're doing this on a car that's going back and forth and basically, again, getting rust under the frame, because if you're driving during the winter, this car basically gonna get beat up by the salt, going to get beat up by the snow and is going to wind up rusting. So this is not a good deal for any young person in their 20s. You buy this car when you're 20 years old. 15 years later, again, this car basically, and with American cars, a lot of them can't even last about 5 to 7 years. So you're again underwater with this car. You're completely underwater with this car as related to repairs and cost as related to this car, and you're still paying a car note on this car that basically again is so bad that it's just basically you're underwater and the car is eating you up in maintenance costs and costs as related things. But this is par for the course for the Orange Man. Again, this was a guy who basically had multiple bankruptcies in the late 1980s and early 1990s, and his solution is to try to again get you to go get yourself into debt that will basically destroy you financially. I mean, a 50-year mortgage in and of itself, again, a really stupid deal. Only a complete fool would get into that. Same thing with a 15-year car note. I mean, if most people with cars, again, they don't go out here and get into that type of deal. No, they don't do that whatsoever because, again, cars lose value as you drive them off the lot. And most smart people, when they want A to B cars, they go to places like auto auctions, or they go to Facebook Marketplace, go get themselves a beater, for $1,000, get themselves a beater for $2,000, and call it a day. Because if I'm going to put miles on a car, yeah, I'll get me a ride, but it's just going to be A to B. But my good car, again, I'm not going to spend that type of money. Even then, you're just going to find some car that's used. Again, smart people don't spend money like that. And when it comes down to homes, again, only a fool would get into a mortgage like that whatsoever. But most Americans these days, again, even if they were to get mortgages, they would find that it's just hard to buy real estate with corporations like BlackRock out here and many of these other companies, again, buying up all the property and again, driving up the value of these homes more than what it is, because they want to again hoard all this property, not understanding the ticking time bomb that they're going to be dealing with in a few years by keeping Americans from being able to be homeowners. No, they don't understand. Yeah, you're going to hoard all this property with some scheme, thinking that, oh, we're going to get people to rent this property. But again, what is going to happen is the same thing that happened here in New York, where you're underwater with this property as related to the maintenance nightmare, because what makes people go broke with property is what happened in the 1960s and 1970s and 1980s, when New York basically became a hellhole. Basically, again, a lot of these property owners found out that their property, again, the taxes and the maintenance basically ate them up because you bought an $8,000 house or a $10,000 building, and now you've got $30,000 in property tax. You've got a whole lot of maintenance issues of these buildings falling completely apart, where again the cost to repair it costs more than the property is worth. And as a result, what happened to many of those people who thought these were going to be assets is they were underwater, had to abandon their property because the costs were so much. And the same thing is going to happen to BlackRock and all these other schemers who think that they're going to speculate on property. They're going to wind up just as underwater and stuck with all these maintenance costs and repair costs. I don't care if you corporatize things. What's going to happen is you're going to wind up sunk under these costs. Again, people who own property usually, again, turn property over because they don't want to be stuck with these costs. Now, some families will keep property in the family until the taxes eat them up. And sometimes what happens, again, I've seen people with the mansions. Again, there was a mansion I saw in Chicago where basically the entire mansion, basically the guy abandoned it because it was $30,000 in taxes. And again, the taxes alone led to that person giving up the property because they couldn't afford to keep paying the taxes. And again, this is what eats people up. And these people think, oh, we're keeping the American people out from buying homes by, again, hoarding all this property. But they are going to be in for that rude awakening on taxes and maintenance. And the thing is, they're also going to be in for a rude awakening because, again, most people can't, even if they do get a mortgage, they can't really buy homes because here in New York, I remember when my father passed away, we were looking for a new place, and a lot of the places you would go, they would only want cash. Again, they would only want cash as related to the property. So it's hard for a lot of people who, even if they could get mortgages, to be able to find somebody who would, again, accept their mortgage. No, mortgages these days are like Section 8. Again, a lot of people, they want to get their money real fast, and they would prefer cash over, again, any sort of mortgage because they fear, that they won't be able to get their money as quick because cash is the fastest thing out here. And again, shows how out of touch the Orange Man and many in his administration are as related to property. Again, BlackRock and these companies will buy these properties with cash and basically have hoarded all this property, keeping many people from the American dream. Again, driving up the prices of homes to $500,000 to $1 million. And again, a person making $35,000 to $40,000 a year, they can't even think of buying these homes, and they can't think of buying these homes with cockamamie schemes like 50-year mortgages. They can't think of buying these cars with, again, that's $50,000. Again, if you're making 40 grand, there's no way for you to even think about, again, being able to buy anything. I mean, in the 40s, in the 50s, again, $8,000 for a house when you're making $10,000 a year is basically something that's doable with your expenses. $2,000 for a car, as related to things, is doable, again, when you have $10,000 a year. And same thing if you're in the 80s, again, cars only like $20,000 at the most. And if you're making $40,000 a year, yeah, you can go out here and, again, be able to buy that house and that car. I mean, in the 80s, it was like $100,000. If you're making 20 grand a year, if you're making 50 grand a year, like the top people with college degrees used to do, yeah, that's doable and possible. But if your wages are $35,000 to $40,000 a year, and again, you're 21 years old, and somebody comes to you talking about a 50-year mortgage, again, this is a stupid deal. It's a stupid deal all around because, again, you're not going to be out of that loan until you're 70. And this is on top of the student loans that a person has. I mean, you have most people who come out of college, again, they've already got $100,000, $200,000 in student loans that they've got to pay. And you want to compound that with another $500,000 to $1 million in debt. I mean, if you want to see a bank go completely under, yeah, go ahead with this type of plan. You'll be just as underwater as those casinos were in Atlantic City back in the 90s. You'll be just as underwater fiscally and financially because this whole plan in and of itself, again, you've got a kid with, $100,000 in student loans or $200,000 in student loans. You're going to put another $500,000 on them as related to a house. You're going to put another $50,000 to $60,000 on them with a car. Yeah, this is the fastest way for a country to go bankrupt because this, again, is not good fiscal planning. Not good fiscal planning that will make America great again. No, this is the type of fiscal planning that will be the art of a raw deal. The art of a raw deal that will basically put many young Americans under before they wind up in their old age. And again, there's other factors. People can wind up sick. They can wind up dying. And again, the bank is the one who's going to have to eat the cost on all these losses. Again, this is a bad deal all around. A bad deal all around for anyone who gets into it because you're going to be in debt for the rest of your life with no way out. And possibly this could lead to a lot of people, again, feeling like their life is hopeless. Again, yeah, you got a house, you got a car, or does the car or the house have you? Critical question I have to ask, because if you get into this type of debt, you're basically, again, in a bad comedy where you're the punchline of a cruel joke. Now, if you want to pick up some of my books on the SJS Direct imprint, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me make more videos taking stuff like 50-year mortgages to the barbecue, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, A Thorn in My Side. The man who rules the world takes on an agent from the CIA, from the Black Boule, in this all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' A Thorn in My Side in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Coming to paperback and e-readers, Esteem, Season of the Witch Girl. The aspiring angel takes on a wicked teenage witch in this action-packed all-new Esteem series adventure. Pre-order your copy of Esteem, Season of the Witch Girl at Amazon.com and other online booksellers. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.